of the last fleeing troll died in the distance. Trog led the way once more, and in a short time daylight appeared in front of them. A few more steps and the party came out of the tunnel. They found themselves on a broad ledge high above a deep valley.
There
Said Trog.
is the Vale of Kaldor.
In the center of a bubbling, fuming lake was a small island. He-Man held Stratus's ring at arm's length towards the island. The stone glowed faintly.
Delora is somewhere on the island,
He said.
but there is no way to reach her without the Wind Raider. With my weight alone, it should be possible to cross over the mountains.
Escorted by the dwarfs, He-Man set off back through the tunnels. There was no sign of the trolls, but as they crossed the rock arch, they found the way barred by the figure of a strange-looking warrior.
A Gnoll!
Exclaimed He-Man. He drew his weapon. The gnoll charged, but one blast from He-Man and it stumbled back in panic, lost its footing, and fell with a loud splash into the river far below. Back at the Wind Raider, He-Man lost no time in checking the power system. Then he climbed behind the controls. With a wave to the dwarfs, he set the powerful machine at maximum ascent and roared upwards towards the snowy peaks. Swiftly, the Wind Raider gained height, skimming just clear of the side of the mountains. Despite the craft's heating system, the icy cold of the mountains chilled He-Man's hands on the controls. Frost and icicles formed on the outside surfaces. The air grew thinner the higher He-Man flew. Freezing winds buffeted the machine. Then the snow clouds closed in. He-Man now only occasionally had a glimpse of the mountainside. Then, through a gap in the cloud, he saw a sharp peak directly in front. A last sharp burst of power, and the Wind Raider was over the summit and diving into the Vale of Kaldor. Below, on their ledge, Teela and Man-at-Arms heard the roar of the Wind Raider's jets as He-Man tried to locate his companions through the thick cloud. Quickly, Teela held her Cobra Power Scepter above her head and sent out a powerful energy beam. In the Wind Raider, He-Man saw his energy blade pulse with power. Steering round until the pulses were strongest, he dropped down to land beside Teela. In his lair inside Snake Mountain, Skeletor had his slaves bring Stratos before him.
You poor fool!
He gloated.
Did you really think that giving yourself up would do any good? While I decide your fate, you shall join me in watching the feeble antics of your friends.
The Lord of Destruction pressed a switch, and part of the rock wall slid aside to reveal a huge video screen. Another touch to the controls, and there before them lay the Vale of Kaldor. In the center of the boiling lake lay the island, and on the island was a small figure.
Delora!
Cried Stratos.
And here we have your noble friends who hope to rescue her!
Mocked Skeletor. And Stratos saw He-Man, Teela, and Man-at-Arms clustered around the Wind Raider as they planned what to do next. He-Man scanned the cliffs surrounding the lake. Wyverns perched on every crag. Their wings were folded, but their eyes never blinked as they stood guard over the lake, the island, and the prisoner. Only on the ledge, high on the mountain, were the masters of the universe out of their sight.
These monsters make things difficult,
said He-Man.
Before the Wind Raider was halfway to the island, the nearest Wyvern could seize Delora and carry her off again.
Could we not try after dark?
Suggested Teela.
Wyverns see as well in the dark as in daylight.
Replied He-Man.
Then we will make our own dark,
said Man-at-Arms.
With the help of the snow and a little work on the Wind Raider, we will blind these evil creatures long enough to carry out our task.
Using the toolkit from the Wind Raider, Man-at-Arms set to work. Man-at-Arms' skill made short work of his task. Then He-Man took the controls, and the Wind Raider lifted off with a roar of its jets. Up went the powerful craft until it was level with the great snow cornices which overhung the lake far below. Skimming just above the snow, He-Man pressed the extra control fitted by Man-at-Arms. Instantly, the jets sent a blast of superheat down onto the snow. The snow melted, and all round the valley it began to slip and slide in a vast avalanche into the boiling lake. In a moment, clouds of dense steam rose into the air, filling the valley and covering the island. Instantly, He-Man put the Wind Raider into a steep dive. Stratos' ring was glowing. Now it began to flash brighter and faster every moment. Through the haze, He-Man made out the shape of the island. As the Wind Raider came down on the shore, Delora ran down from among the rocks and leapt aboard. The last of the snow fell into the lake, and the steam began to lift. Almost touching the bubbling surface, the Wind Raider skimmed low at top speed. The way ahead was clear, but above was still covered in a thick layer of steam. The guarding wyverns heard the sound of the jets, but even their keen sight was helpless to see anything. Several of the fierce reptiles dived from their perches after the invisible enemy. They tried to follow the echoes of the Wind Raider's engines. Screeching with rage, they flew blindly about. Some crashed into the mountainside. Others collided with each other. And two, in head-on collision, fell into the boiling waters of the lake. Again guided by Teela's Cobra Scepter, He-Man brought the Wind Raider into land on the ledge. Trog and the dwarfs were waiting. While He-Man took off on the return journey over the mountain, they escorted Teela, Man-at-Arms, and Delora back through the tunnels. On the video screen, Skeletor watched as a steam cloud obscured the picture. Angrily, he moved the controls, but the image was no clearer. He had an occasional glimpse of a baffled wyvern, but that was all. He guessed that his prisoner had escaped. With a scream of rage, the Lord of Destruction crashed his fist on the control panel.
I am served by fools and weaklings!
He roared and sent a blast from his Havoc staff crackling across the cavern. In a panic, his slaves scurried for cover, leaving Stratos unguarded. Dodging another blast, the Lord of the Air soared up to the cavern roof. Skeletor fired again, but only succeeded in bringing down a section of rock.
Careful!
Mocked Stratos.
Even the Lord of Destruction needs a roof over his head.
Through the passages and caverns inside Snake Mountain, Stratos led the raging Skeletor. Skeletor tried every trick he knew, but Stratos' aerobatics left him panting and bewildered. Every part of Skeletor's lair contained cunning traps. These were meant to stop enemies getting in or getting out, but Stratos evaded them all. Falling rocks, hidden trapdoors, spiked gates. Stratos swooped and circled just out of reach. Now they were at the entrance to the mountain lair. Daylight shone outside the gloomy gateway, but instead of making his escape, Stratos kept on taunting Skeletor, drawing him always closer to the archway. Skeletor's eyes blazed red in his bony skull. Mad with rage, he watched Stratos skim through the gate to the bridge linking the twin peaks of Snake Mountain. The Lord of the Air came down on the bridge, but as he did so, he gave a cry of pain and collapsed, clutching his leg. Skeletor gave a great cry of triumph.
Ha! Let that be a lesson to you! You thought that you could outwit and make a fool of Skeletor, Lord of Destruction! You are at my mercy!
And he strode through the gate towards the fallen Stratos. Too late, he realized that he had been tricked. The trap door which guarded the entrance to Snake Mountain crashed open. With a scream, Skeletor plunged into a deep and foul dungeon.
Goodbye!
Cried Stratos.
I think it will be many hours before your frightened slaves come to get you out.
At Castle Grayskull, He-Man, Teela, and Man-at-Arms waited with Delora. Before long, Stratos joined them and described how he had tricked Skeletor into falling foul of one of his own traps. He-Man returned Stratos' ring as Delora and her husband prepared to return to their mountain home in the fair land of Avion. When they had gone, He-Man stood alone on the battlements. He heard the sound of wings. It was the great falcon Zor. The noble bird circled the castle and perched on a pinnacle close to He-Man. The bird's dark eyes glowed, and in his mind, He-Man heard the voice of the sorceress.
You have done well, and have used your power wisely. But remember, without the aid of Trog and his people, things might have been very different. Never forget that even the smallest of the people of Eternia have a part to play in overcoming the powers of evil.
Then the bird was gone, and He-Man prepared to return to the palace and his other life as the gentle Prince Adam.